Hello and welcome to the Java tutorial, and today I want to show you some code that is only executed and depends when some conditions are fulfilled. So we make a new class like you see here. We call it condition. Okay, finish. We have a new class called conditions, and in the first step we make the main method as you know it. And what's what I mean with code that is depends on some conditions. So until now we had some code that is just executed one by one, step by step, but now we want to do it that the code is only executed when a special condition is fulfilled. So, and if not, the code is just, you jump over this code, so it's not executed. So how do we do this? At first I want to make here a simple output. You know this, system out, hello. And system out, auf Wiedersehen, or English goodbye. And like in every other programming language, we can use so-called if operations. And the basic structure of this looks like this. It starts with the keyword if, then starts a bracket, and in this bracket, in these brackets, is the condition. And then we use the other brackets, and in these box there are the declarations or reclamations for the program. And yes, so there are the commands in between in this block. And they are only executed if the word says if the if condition is completely fulfilled. So we need a new type of data that says, okay, it's fulfilled or not, so true or false. And this leads us to the next type, Boolean. You learned everything about integer and float and strings and characters, but now we just have a variable, a type, where the variable can only be in two states, true or false. And this is very, very important for our conditions. So for the first example, I use if, and then I say the Boolean value true. So if is true, and it is true here. I set it by means to true, and we execute it. You see it's true, so we see hello, and after this it's not in the block, auf Wiedersehen, so goodbye. So a condition is true, so it's executed, no surprise. If I set it now to false and execute it, you see just auf Wiedersehen. Hello is missing because, of course, the if condition was false, so it's not executed. So we make now a variable. We can also create or declarate Boolean variables, and I call this variable say hello, and I set this by default to true. Okay, and in this if statement I put now say hello, and if you look on it, if I execute it, you see hello and goodbye. In the next step I make a new Boolean variable that says say goodbye, sag auf Wiedersehen in German. And I set it to false. So we make also here an if statement and use here the variable say goodbye. And in this block I put now the last system out. And so we have here in the first say hello, the variable, and then say goodbye. And now let's execute the program. Let's run it. And you see only hello, because say hello is true and say goodbye is false. So you see, this is a basic principle. The code doesn't make any, or doesn't make much sense, but it's important that you just understand it here. You will see now in the next big example that it's very important that you understand it. And but before I want to show you another case, the else case. For example, if the first condition is not fulfilled, we use else. So if the if condition is not fulfilled, we use else. and you see here it's true. So you see just hello because it's if say hello is fulfilled and we don't need the else. But if I set it to false, you see if is not fulfilled, and so else starts, the code in else starts. So we just see say goodbye. And there are some more operators that we need now for the big example I want to show you. We can, for example, test if a number is bigger or smaller than another number. For example, I test 1 smaller than 3. In this case, of course, it's true. We can do it the other way around, like if 3 is smaller than 1, but of course that's false. We can also use yes, if 1 is greater than 2. Or for example, we can compare numbers if they are equal or not. You see here I write 2 equal 2, and very important is that you don't write just 1 equal sign. You need 2 sign equal characters. There are of course some more commands, and I'm gonna make a comment with these operations, with these commands. So you know the operations smaller, greater, then there's of course smaller or equal, or bigger any or equal, and unequal, of course. This is exclamation mark and equal, and then equal for you write equal. Then you can connect the conditions with a logical AND. You need 2 ampersands and 2 bars for logical OR. I can show you here an example for this. If true and, so ampersand, true, then return something here like system out and for the logical OR I use if. Oh, sorry, there must be an F, that was a typo. And here I have true, bar, and or false. So in the command block I write OR, and both conditions should be fulfilled because it's and true is correct, and or true or false is also correct. So if I put in the first condition, set it to false, you see the logic is not fulfilled because true and false doesn't match, and false it's not or, it's and. So we just see here Auf Wiedersehen from the last example. So let's go now to a more practical and more sophisticated example where we use our knowledge that we gained now. We want to write now a program that checks if an email address is a genuine or valid email address. So we want to check the string if it's correct or if it matches correctly to an email address. So let's make a new class that I call email checker. And in this class email checker, we create a new method, and this method returns a boolean, and I call this is valid email. So this method, yes, returns true or false. And the parameter that we pass is string s, and s is the email address. And what do we do now when we pass it? So how we check if the conditions for a valid email address are fulfilled. So we have a string s, and the first what we have to check if it has too much blanks, too much space, and we want to remove it if it has too much. Then the email address, the string, is not allowed to be empty, of course, because well, it wouldn't be a. Then it has to be. It needs an character, and it needs also a dot inside, like test@test.com. So in the first step, let's remove the unnecessary blank signs or space. So we write s equals s, and we write a dot, and when we press Control space, we have many methods in Java that is already installed in Java. For example, the trim command, and this command removes automatically the unnecessary space characters in the beginning or in the end of the string. So now let's go to the checking. But first we need some variables. At first the length of the string of the email address, and we use here the command length, the method length, and we create the variables @ dot. This should be the position of the @ and the dot character in the email address. And now comes the condition. So we open the brackets, and here in the box in the block is the return. So if any of these conditions is not fulfilled, it should return false. Only when everything is correct, it should return true. So now we have to write our conditions. At first, the length should not be 0, because when the string is empty, the length is 0. And yes, len is, with the method length, the length of the string. So if the string is empty, it's set to 0. Then we use a logical OR. Now we have to be careful. We want to check now if there's no @ sign. So we write here @ equals s, and now we use a method index of that gives us the position in a string. And now we have to pass the character. It has to be the @ sign, the @ character. And if there's no @ sign, @ character, it should return -1. So we set it equal -1. And if this is true, this complete if construct is executed and returns false. And the same thing we can do with our dot. So we write dot. And the third condition, we make here the dot and the index of. We use the same method. So we have here checked our first 3 conditions. And so this part of code, not this one, but not here in the comment, but when the if block is, when some of these conditions are fulfilled or not fulfilled, the if block is executed and then it returns a false. So then we know our email address is not valid. But there are some more conditions. For example, it's not allowed that the @ is at the beginning, or that the dot comes before the @ And I want to show you how we do this now, how we check this. So we make a new condition, make some brackets here, and we want to see if at is at position 0. So I write in the beginning. So if at equals equal 0 is fulfilled, now we use the logical OR because we have a second condition. It's not allowed that a dot is before the at. So we look if the index of dot is smaller than the index of at, because this would mean that the dot comes before the at. And if one of these conditions is fulfilled, then we return false. So let's delete these comments, we don't need them anymore. We also can create a new or another condition. For example, the ending of the domain is not allowed, or must have at least 2 characters. You know, the domain ending is like .com or .de or .us, and like .k is not allowed. So we have a new method, and if after the dot has to come at least 2 characters, and so let's write here just return dot plus 2 is smaller than length, and if this is fulfilled, then it returns false. Okay, so we have made some check conditions, and now let's test it with a practical email address. We make the main method, and in system out we use the method isValidEmail that we created here with the conditions. And now let's use a string, an exemplary email address, and we use somebody at somewho.com, and this should be a perfect email address, so it's true. So this is okay, and now let's make a false, a non-valid email address regarding or depending on our code. For example, if we make here a space, there's no dot, then it's false. And you see here now, I try here some random examples. For example, here no at in between, or a completely empty string. This would be also interesting. You see here, it also returns false. What we can test, if our trim method really removes all the unnecessary space characters. So that is executed now, and you see it's, even though we had way too many space characters here, even though it's true. Of course, we can make it way more sophisticated. We could compare it with the endings. If it's a valid country like Germany or France or USA, we can use, or you can try way more conditions, like if there are 2 or 3 points, only 1 point is allowed, or at symbols. So I hope here you understood the basic principle in this tutorial, in this episode, and yes, thank you for listening and thank you for watching.